it was my second to last full-time job where they talk about the Sunday scaries. I legitimately had the Sunday scaries where every Sunday night my stomach would be in knots. I would just think about I was so anxious to open my laptop on Monday, which is ironic because most of the times I was opening it on Saturday too, right? Because that was just the kind of work culture that we had. And I have not once since being self-employed ever had that feeling. I have been so genuinely excited to open my laptop Monday morning and to plan for Monday morning on Sunday evening because that makes me feel even better about Monday, and it's wild. It's like a wild transformation that I wish every woman would have that feeling in their life.
Hey, Possibility Seekers, we're back. Guess what? Got another awesome, badass guest. Her name is Emily Claire Hughes, and she is the founder of the 10K Email Club, a marketing membership for female founders that's transforming countless small business email newsletters. She's done mine, by the way, with over 7 years as a professional copywriter for progressive brands like Clue. Emily is insanely enthusiastic about helping women business owners spread their message and see a greater ROI in an authentic and unsalesy way. She's fun, by the way. Emily resides in many places, from Europe to New York City, and you can reach out to her on her website, which we will post in the show notes. Welcome, Emily Claire Hughes.
Thank you, Monique DeMaio. I'm so excited to be here.
I mean, when we get into a room, there's like electricity flying everywhere, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's almost like borderline dangerous. I feel like if you and I, especially if you were to add alcohol into a room with the two of us, I think it could be really dangerous. And I also think we could not be near other people.
Or the flip side could happen where the entire room, every woman in the room wants to hang out with us because we're having so much fun. It's contagious. And who doesn't want to hang out with people that are having fun?
I know. I think you attract good people.
Thank you. I do. I think you attract good people too. You know what? Birds of a feather and all that good stuff. So yeah. So thank you for the help that you've given me on my personal journey in newsletter marketing. And I want you guys to know that the badass sort of stance and the Monique's Mafia and the other sort of tonality that you've seen me embrace has a lot to do with Emily saying, okay, why don't you just own this? Because that's who you are. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's just do that then. So you've been instrumental in helping me see things that I didn't see for myself. So I want people to know that. So I was so interested to hear that you started your career as an entertainer. Please tell us what this whole journey has been like for you.
Oh, Lord, it's been a journey. I mean, I don't need to bore you with all the details of it, but yeah, my background is in musical theater. So if you don't know what musical theater is, that's like singing, acting, and dancing. It's like Broadway style entertainment. And ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a singer, actress. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be in musicals. I was obsessed with musicals as a kid. So when I was 16, I started performing professionally. That was the first time that somebody paid me to be in a musical. And I remember it just blew my mind. I never even understood that this could be a career. I was like, oh, I can get paid to do this thing that I was just doing for fun because I loved it so much. For me, that was flip switched. I was like, I'm going to do this with the rest of my life. That is what I am going to do. And I became obsessed. I coached with amazing coaches to get into the top musical theater programs for college, for university. So that's what I did. I came to New York City, studied at university, and got my bachelor's of fine arts in musical theater. And I lived that life. I stayed in New York. I did tours. I performed with the USO show troupe, which was a very cool job at military bases in sequin outfits, for servicemen and women all over the world. I went on national tours, and eventually it was a performing job that took me to Europe, which is where then kind of my life changed because I realized I kind of wanted a different lifestyle. For me, part of, and I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but really eventually I just felt like I was in this constant hamster wheel grind of never understanding what my next job would be because as a performer, you never really know. You're constantly having to hustle to that next audition, that next thing. Success is so fleeting when you're a performer. It's if you're lucky, you're in a show that runs for 6 months, and that's long. So I just really wanted a better lifestyle. I wanted more balance. And so eventually I decided to leave.
Wow. And then, so tell us your first sort of journey. I mean, obviously we're talking about we talked about the naming this podcast, "I'm not qualified, so what?" But, you came to the business world. How was that? Like, that leap into it was not necessarily traditional either, and I thought that was fascinating, and I think the listeners would love this.
Oh my god, it was so non-traditional, and it was just, like, bumpy and chaotic, and yeah, I specifically remember so at one point I was like, "Okay, what else am I gonna do if I don't wanna perform?" Right? At that point, I had decided that I wanted to move to Europe, and I knew I didn't wanna perform in Europe. Like, if you're gonna perform somewhere, it's New York, you know what I mean? Like, you don't move to the middle of nowhere in France or Portugal or Germany to, like, do Broadway musicals, like, that's just not how it works. So I was like, "Okay, what else am I qualified to do?" Not much, you know what I mean? And I think for me, it was just trying to figure out, like, okay, what have I been good at in life? And I thought, okay, I really like writing. And I had started a blog when I was living on the cruise ship because I was living on a cruise ship at this point in time, which is very strange. And I was waking up in new countries every day. And I felt like that was very interesting to a lot of people. So I thought, okay, how can I share more about this? So I started a blog. And honestly, it got to the point where I felt like, okay, this blog seems to be gaining some traction. I'm now getting offered, like, okay, I could start writing for other travel blogs, but that's not exactly that work life balance that I was going for either. That's not like the success that I was craving. So why don't I just treat this blog like my business and see what happens? So that's what I did. This blog was just kind of like a passion project that I turned into like a full-on business in my mind, if that makes sense. So I took it very seriously. And I started sending a weekly newsletter telling all my like everyone who was reading my blog that there was going to be a new post and things like that. So eventually I started to realize, okay, I can write. I don't really know much about business, but I can write. So I took any weird, crappy job I could find for writing on the internet because I knew I had to put together a portfolio if I ever wanted to be like a serious writer. So I did. I put together a portfolio. It was not the best, but it worked. And I started applying for copywriting jobs because at that point in time, it was like the only natural next thing that I figured I could do. And I also liked it. Like I really enjoyed writing. So I will forever remember I was sitting in a cafe in the Netherlands right next to the cruise ship. And I had my first job interview for like a full-time copywriting job. And I remember Romana, who is now a woman that I am close with for forever and ever and ever. She's the first woman who hired me. And I will never forget, she looked me dead in the eyes through the Zoom camera and said, "Listen, Emily, I've got to tell you, you are the least qualified person I've interviewed for this job." And I was like, I know. I'm not going to pretend that I am. But clearly, we both see something. We want to work together. There must be something here. And I told her, I said, listen, if you're willing to give me a chance on this, like, I cannot tell you how badly I am dying to build a career as a copywriter. So whatever you teach me, I will absorb like a sponge, right? And in return, I promise you that like I will go above and beyond, right? Because I was so hungry to have this kind of like lifestyle change. And she hired me. And from that moment on, I have to say it's kind of like, I mean, that to me was like a career defining moment in the sense that it was my first door that opened. And I got so lucky. Romana and Anna was the other woman who was my boss there at the time. They just taught me everything. They were sending me courses. They were sending me articles. It was like, oh, sign up for this. Oh, take this. Here, we got the CEOs to agree to give you this copywriting course. Like, I was just a sponge and I absorbed everything. And I really credit that first job and especially those two women, Romana and Anna, for really like kind of opening doors for me that truthfully, like me just sitting there submitting for jobs on LinkedIn would never have happened.
Okay, I need to put a pin in this because this is something that I'm passionate about. I'm doing a keynote tomorrow, and also just I was on a panel for the New York City 212 NYC, and it was advertising and marketing people. Your job is getting a job, and that was the topic of the thing. And I realized a bunch of things, but one is that people are not really taught how to get a job, and what you just described is not what the average person does.
In what way?
In the sense that they hide behind job boards and spend 12 hours a day responding to job postings that may not even exist because it's by law that you have to post a job in the public domain, even if you've already identified more often than not an internal candidate to fill that role. So you're spitting against the wind. And the other thing that people don't do is they don't leverage networks and they don't talk to people. Who hires people? People. Who do you want to work for? People. So who do you have to talk to? People. Oh my god, it's freaking people. So, yeah. And you were authentic and you said what was true. You took the 800-pound gorilla in the room, addressed it, and said, yes, but despite the fact that I know that I'm the least qualified candidate, I'm going to be your hardest worker. I'm going to give it my best shot. You are never going to regret hiring me, and I'm going to make it work for you. And I am the best candidate from an attitudinal perspective. That you can't teach.
And I 1,000% agree with you. And I would even take it to like the one other thing I would add is that Anna, who was the one of the women who also like vouched for me being hired at the time, which I found so interesting. You know that she told me later on that there were two things that made her want to hire me. One was she went to YouTube and found like videos of me performing, and she said, "Oh, this girl's got like she's got like charisma. Like she'll add something to our team." That was number one. Fine, not everyone has that. Number two, my waitressing experience. Way back on my CV, because I had nothing else to add, I had added in the fact that like when I was in New York City, I had worked as a waitress in a restaurant in my college years. And I worked my way up to like managing one of the restaurants, but it was not like a glamorous job. And she said that it was that restaurant experience. And she knew that anybody who could handle their own in a New York City restaurant could handle their own with the job that they were hiring for. And when she told me that, I was like, do you know how many times I thought about taking that off my CV? Like how many times I thought about just getting rid of my waitressing on my resume? Because I was like, what value add is that? Like it is like, it blew my mind that was one thing that she immediately was like, hire this girl. She's been a waitress.
That's really interesting. And if you think about it, I mean, it is, especially in Manhattan. And so I should tell my son's girlfriend Grace this story or have her listen. It is true. I mean, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. It's sort of like, okay, thank you, Frankie. But but it's true. Demanding, you need to shuck and jive, you need to be like customer service, you need to be problem solver. You do need to do a lot of those things. And I think managing a restaurant is even on the top end of that. So tell us, I mean, to say so yes, so we agree on that. And for those of you listening who are looking for a pivot, that is a critical part of it, is you just have to be very, very authentic and also have some enthusiasm. Like for Christ's sake, like if you're sitting back in your chair expecting somebody to offer you a job because you showed up, get over yourself. It doesn't work like that. And show some interest, show some personality, show some energy, show some enthusiasm, do something, right? So on the segue to your, I call the global citizen of the world. You've lived in different places, you speak different languages. Like I want you to kind of elaborate on where you've lived and how you've sort of taken those experiences and made them your own and built on them.
Sure. So I think anyone should live abroad if they are given the chance in life. I think living abroad fundamentally changed my life, and it introduced me to parts of myself that I didn't even know were there. It was not so easy to make it happen, right? I mean, we both know that there's visas and rules and regulations and taxes and things like that. So I knew I wanted to move to Europe. I knew I wanted to leave New York. I knew I wanted to move to Europe, but I had no idea how I was going to make that happen. I had an ex at the time who was living in Portugal. And the more I looked into Portugal, beautiful place, right? Nobody's like, it's like, oh God, I have to go live in Portugal. It was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. And it was much easier to get a visa for Portugal. So I had this weird convoluted plan in my mind. And this is how my mind works, as like probably not the most logical person, but a very determined person. Was I decided that if I could be in Europe and live in Europe, it would be much easier for a European company to hire me. That was my thought process. Honestly, I think it worked.
That's not actually illogical at all, by the way, Emily, at all. Once you're in the EU, you're in the EU. I mean, it makes sense.
Yes, but for instance, I was like, okay, so I'm going to live in Portugal and then I'm going to get a German company to sponsor my visa. Like that was just kind of my thought process. It actually on paper was the exact same process for the German company. But in my mind, I just thought, well, I'm in Europe, so I immediately seem closer. Like they don't have to pay for a move. They don't have to do like, this was my reasoning. And honestly, it worked. So to get into Portugal was easier. I could get a visa that basically said I can support myself, right? I have a job, I make money, I will pay taxes, but you don't need to, like, I'm not here to rely on welfare is basically the visa that kind of existed at the time. Don't quote me on exactly what the visa type is called. Then I knew I wanted to get back to Germany. I had really fallen in love with Germany. I really wanted to work in Germany. I just loved everything about Germany. And I mean, within a couple months, I just realized that like for where I was at this point in my life, I think I had just turned like 27 or something like that, had just started my job as a copywriter. And I was so driven to absorb the business world that I feel like I had missed out on for so long. living in a sleepy surf town in Portugal is like not the place to do that. So I like it really took me a couple months to go, oh, I think we're not supposed to be here right now. So how do I get to Germany, right? And so at that point then I just started applying for jobs that like with German companies like crazy. And at that point in time, I had been promoted at the company where I had started as a copywriter with zero experience. And they had kind of promoted me to this like twofold position where I was still doing all of their marketing copywriting, but I also started to work with influencers because they just kind of figured, okay, this girl had a blog. She kind of understands this world. Like she'll understand influencers. Let's give her the project. And I took it and ran with it, like everything at the time, because I was absolutely determined to prove myself. And I started to really like working with influencers. So that I have to say at the time was a really, really good field to be in because everybody was talking about influencer marketing. This was like 2018, 2019, something like that. And so I was in like influencer marketing before I think it was even called influencer marketing. So that was like kind of like my key to getting into Germany. So I just applied for tons of influencer marketing jobs in Germany and I got one that sponsored my visa, would allow me to like literally live out my dream of moving to Hamburg, Germany. And I think like 2 months later, I did it.
Nice. So how was that? So you traveled a boatload. Tell me more about that.
I was like, the job sucked, but the traveling was fine. the no, living in Germany was, I think, one of the most transformational parts of my life. Like, I look back on it with absolutely nothing but the best memories for how I evolved as a person. I eventually realized it's not my forever place, honestly, because of like the mentality. I think I am a very positive, open, driven person. And that's just not the German mentality. I mean, it's not good or bad, right? And I think that there are a lot of things about the American mentality that could also like there's also room for improvement with Americans, right? But I just realized it wasn't my place. What I loved was it was the first time in my life where I had vacation days that were paid and there were lots of them. Like I had the most incredible health insurance I've ever had in my life. I could afford the cutest, sweetest apartment for my very own self. And that was the first time in my life I had lived alone. And I truthfully like cannot tell you how much like I feel like I blossomed as a person in Germany. First of all, because of where I was in my life, right? It was like my late 20s, which is like a transformational time, I think, anyways. I solo traveled. Like, I mean, it was honestly in the middle of the pandemic, so things were shaky. But as soon as things were open enough, like I went on a solo trip to Barcelona and had the best time. Like, I went back to Portugal and visited friends from when I was there. Once I met my now husband, like we went to Italy together, we went to Paris together. Like, it was so, I feel like I honestly lived the life that I had dreamed of. And keeping in mind at the time that I was working for startups, so I was not bringing in like a massive salary or anything like that. But life to me in Europe, and I think this sounds like a bit cliche because it was not always, easy peasy, but it really was much easier than it was in America. And I think I appreciated and savored every moment of that.
So you are now, fast forward, married to a German. He has dual citizenship, does he not? Or he's working on that?
He's working on his green card at the moment. So yes, we're working on getting him to where he needs to be.
So then you're now in a position where you have your own business. Now, what was the bridge to doing what you did? Now you have your own business, and I want to talk about the power of women in community and what you're doing with your community so we can talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I worked in marketing full time for several years. I went back and forth between copywriting, general marketing, and then like more so in influencer marketing when it was really hot. My last position was more so just like marketing, messaging, copywriting, newsletters, campaigns, all that type of stuff, and then overseeing influencer marketing. And I literally say this all the time. I have to preface this with this makes it sound like I'm the problem, but I promise I've had really great bosses in my life. I had two really bad bosses in a row, like two people who just were not motivating people. They were not inspiring people. And I'm not saying every boss has to be inspiring, but they have to at least make you feel kind of appreciated for the work that you're doing. One was a guy who literally screamed at me in a meeting. And that's when I decided, like, bye. I don't care if you're sponsoring my visa. I will find somebody else. And then the other was like, I'll never forget what my former boss said to me the one day. She was like, Emily, I feel like you've got a lot of friends. And she said it in that exact way. And I was like, this is weird. This is weird. Like, it was just like, it was this culture of, you need to be at the office for 12 hours a day, every day, and we're here on weekends. I was like, y'all, I moved to Germany to not have this. Like, this is not what I was going for, which is ironic because I am a very hardworking person, right? But I didn't like that implied hardworking.
Yeah, but I mean, that whole clock watching thing, that whole, like, you have to log in and then log off 12 hours later, and I need to see you sitting in front of me in your chair.
You had to walk by the boss's office to, like, leave the office, and I remember, like, there were nights when, like, because I really value being active, and I would go to a workout class and leave at 7 p.m., and I would be the first person to leave, and they would all kind of look at me. I was like, "This is not great." So anyways, I got to the point where my contract with that company was up. It was a one-year contract, and I started applying for other full-time jobs. And every interview I was in, I just got this, like, nasty feeling in my stomach of, I don't wanna do good work for bad people anymore. Like, I just wanna do good work. I don't wanna be involved in office politics. I don't wanna be involved in who's at the office for how long. Like, I don't wanna be involved in any of this nonsense. Like, I just wanna show up and do really good work for people. And at this point in time, it was super risky. I look back in time and I am honestly very proud of myself because I had one tiny freelance client on the side, like somebody tiny who was from a former copywriting job I had had. They really liked me and they brought me on to kind of help out their next company with a few things. And somehow I just kind of made this pact with myself. I said, okay, Emily, you don't want a full time job. That's pretty clear. So what are you going to do? Because I have to say, like, I was really, truly not in a financial position to not have a job. Luckily in Germany, it's amazing. If I wanted to, I could have taken unemployment, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to be that person that everyone could talk about, oh, these immigrants coming into the country and just taking unemployment. Like, no, I'm here to work and I'm here to contribute and pay a hefty amount of taxes. So I gave myself this ultimatum and I said, okay, if I can find a client that will pay for my rent and expenses and everything like that in the next month, like if by, I think it was like April 1st, I was like, if by April 1st, I can find this client, I'm going to become self employed and I'm going to start a business. And I put everything I had into making sure that I found that client. Like it was like my full-time job. Like I treated every single day like it was my full-time job. And in 2 weeks, I had a client that was paying me more per month than my previous full-time job and for 20 hours a week. And that to me, like talk about a life-changing moment, that to me was a life-changing moment. Like I genuinely realized in that moment, first of all, wow, I've been so underpaid for a really long time. And I wish I would have, like, no, but honestly, and I was like, I wish I would have talked about this with more people. Like, why did I not realize how underpaid I was? Okay, light bulb. And second of all, just realizing that, like, I thoroughly had what it took to start a business. And so from then on out, it was like, I never looked back ever.
We have such parallel paths. I'm just a tad bit older than you.
This is why we're stuck in each other's lives forever, Monique. I'm convinced.
I know, right? Exactly. I know. I'm looking at 27 years of on-demand CMO in April 8th is 27 years.
How does it feel?
Unbelievable. You could triple what I make and I wouldn't go back to corporate America. I am certifiably unemployable.
In the best way.
In the best possible way. Yeah, no, I mean, it's when you get to the point where you are doing great work with great people, that's the only thing that matters because it's all about people. Back to the people thing. And also, like, the ability to not have somebody you're not beholden to anybody. Like, if you bet on yourself and you are a hard worker, you know you're gonna make it. Like, we just lost a client the other day and honestly, like, this guy thought he had it over on me. He was like, "Well, I wanna do this, this, and this because I wanna be able to give you a good recommendation." I'm like, "I don't need your effing recommendations. I've been in business for 27 years, and you've known me for, like, 2 minutes.
Like, I recommend you find the exit, sir. Goodbye.
I recommend that you get over yourself and get another ego that fits your body." Because you are over it. I'm over you, and I don't need your money. See, this is the difference. When you plan your life strategically and you don't live over your means, you live way below your means, you can tell somebody to go piss off, and they don't have it over on you. So this is what I always say to women who are starting businesses is like, "Don't spend money on stupid shit."
What stupid shit?
Like, if why do you need 4 Louis Vuitton pocketbooks, as an example? Right? Like, why do you need the $75,000 car when the $40,000 car will be fine? Why do you need the big mama house? Like, we literally spent $200,000 less than what the bank told us we could afford. Why? Because I wanted to be able to send my kids to school without debt. Like, if you do what they say or what you see or the Joneses are doing, you're screwed.
That's a quotable quote.
Yeah, right? So I'm like, you got at some point, yes. So back to our regularly scheduled program, you bet on yourself. You made it work and you knew that you didn't want office politics. You didn't want to work for assholes. I have a no asshole policy. I don't want to work for assholes. I'm way too, I can't.
But exactly, and I think what's so interesting about this is to your point. If you like literally think about two versions of yourself, one who's in a full-time job and one who is self-employed. In that full-time job, that asshole guy, you would have to say, "Okay, let me figure out how we can still work together cuz blah blah blah," cuz you have to stay. You have no exit. You have no option. To me that is insane because there are so many people like that. Whereas like this is my favorite thing about being self-employed is like we can choose who we want to work with. I am so careful with how I try and attract new clients or try and attract new members for my email club. It's like there has to be a personality fit. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. Whereas when you're in a full-time job, everything has to work.
That's right. And I mean, like, so the story of this one is like there's new leader comes in. Maybe you love the old leader and he was great. And then the new one comes in and he's a total asshole. Well, you're stuck with it.
Yeah. How much does that suck?
Oh my God. And so life is too short to work with assholes and to give yourself an ulcer for something that you could prevent.
Yeah, I like it was my second to last full-time job where they talk about the Sunday scaries. I legitimately had the Sunday scaries where every Sunday night my stomach would be in knots. I would just think about like I was so anxious to open my laptop on Monday, which is ironic because most of the times I was opening it on Saturday too, right? Because that was just the kind of like work culture that we had. And I never have that. I have not once since being self-employed ever had that feeling. I have been so genuinely excited to open my laptop Monday morning and to plan for Monday morning on Sunday evening because that makes me feel even better about Monday, And it's wild. It's like a wild transformation that I wish every woman would have that feeling in their life.
Well, thank you for that. That's awesome. And that's a great segue to you are building a community of women who are empowered. So we're on the same journey and we're on the same mission. So how we do it is slightly different and at the same time complementary. So tell us a little bit about your model and your business and how you are building this community and helping these women.
Sure. So the 10K email club is basically a marketing membership for female founders specifically who have an email newsletter on their hands and either aren't using it, don't know how to use it, are constantly trying to sell and not seeing results, et cetera, et cetera. I basically started it for two reasons. One, when I was a full-time copywriter, I love startups. There's a mushy sweet spot in my heart for startups. Startups consistently have $0. So whenever I had women with startups coming to work with me, they'd say, "Oh, okay, can you help me with my email newsletters?" Because that's what I was really specializing in at the time. I said, "Yes, of course. Here would be like my retainer rate for a month." And they said, "Oh, I can't afford that." And it just like it kept happening again and again and again. And I was like, where are these women going? Like, who is eventually helping them with their email newsletters? And I realized that one, he was either a really bad copywriter they could find on Upwork or something like that, or two, they just weren't doing it. Like, they literally were not doing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, y'all, like email marketing, super high ROI, one of the most cost effective marketing channels you could ever try. But I also understood that I couldn't do it for everyone. So I was like, how can I do it with everyone? And at this point in time, this is when all the business coaches, at least that I was consuming, right? Because I was eating all this stuff up. Everyone was talking about having a scalable offer. I was like, what's a scalable offer? What's a scalable offer? What's my scalable offer? And I just kept thinking like, what is my scalable offer? And I'm glad I waited. I waited a while to really try and figure out like, what is my scalable offer before I felt like it was just like staring me dead in the face where I was like, it's done with you. It's not done for you. It's giving somebody the framework to do their own newsletter and then going in at the end and making it better, right? It's like, they say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's like, let me take female founders who are so eager to drink the water to the pond. You know what I mean? And then help them get it over the line. And it wound up being the coolest thing I've ever done for two reasons. One, I realized it totally worked. I don't need to write somebody's email newsletter from scratch. And I actually work with a lot of founders who like to write. They just don't know how to bring it all home at the end for a really clear call to action, to really make somebody want to click, sign up, book a call, whatever that might be. So that was a really cool realization. And the second realization I had goes back to your original question, which I promise I am answering, is the power of bringing women together in community. In the beginning, and I'll be super honest, I started my email club with one person and I had to call everyone I know to get a second person in because I'm like, it's not a club if there's one person in here. Like, it is one-on-one coaching. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what I'm doing. So as soon as I got the second person in, then I got the third person, then I got the fourth person. And once I had like the first 6 people in, I started to see the coolest transformation of like, I was leading calls, I was leading workshops for everyone, but they were really cheering each other on and giving each other ideas and collaborating with each other. And they started to like send me the sweetest messages that like I started to save in my phone. That's like I have an album in my phone that I highly recommend everyone has one that's called like Love Notes, right? And it's literally like nice feedback and testimonials I get from people. And I just started to get messages from women that was like, Emily, can I just tell you how cool it is not to be doing this whole business thing alone? Because so many of us don't have business owner friends, especially in the beginning. I think as you get more established, and to your point about, networking and people, I'd say after a couple of years of being in business, you start to really round out this network. But when you're beginning, it's very solitary and it is very lonely and you're doubting yourself constantly. And so I think to have this space where, first of all, we're being incredibly productive, right? I'm not a person who's just going to bring women, exactly like you, Monique. Like, I'm not going to bring women together to say, hey, aren't we doing great? Like, kumbaya, it's not my vibe. It's literally like, what are we getting done today and how are we moving our businesses forward? Wow, go us. You know what I mean? That's what I live for. And so, yeah, that's what it's kind of turned into. And I think the only other thing I would add to that is eventually it got to the point where I realized, okay, there's something really cool here, but this is for people who have their business and it's kind of like it's like up and running. What about the women who want to get started? Because I started to really have a lot of conversations and get messages from women who wanted to get started. There was nothing for them in terms of how do you get an email newsletter up and running. So then I started what's called Spark in the email club, which is like the lower tier offer now, where it is much more accessible from a price point standpoint. And that's like, we just meet once a week and I'm going to, hey, this week, I want you to work on the sign up page for your email newsletter. Here's the copy that should be on it. Oh, that's the copy you want to use? Cool. Can I make it better? Let me give you these 3 words instead of those 3 words. And that's just been so cool to see. So like the entire community has just taken off, I think, more than I ever imagined it could have.
So how if you don't mind our asking, how many women are in your community now?
So I think at the moment, I mean, it ebbs and flows every month. We're at about 40 members at the moment.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. Like, I mean, the fact that every now and then for me, it's never enough. But if I really do take a moment and zoom out, it's been just over a year since I launched it.
Oh, for God's sake, woman.
I know. So if I zoom out, I go, damn, I get to help 40 women every month. That's awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I want it to be 400.
I understand. I understand. And full circle moment is that I am working with Romana to build my community of, powerhouse women in leadership that started out of the retreat that we just did. And they all wanted to stay together. And it was sort of like an answer to a request. I wasn't even in my business plan. It wasn't like I want to start a community. It was like, we need to stay together. How do we stay in this moment, in this work, and in this action, And so Romana, who you just talked about, is my sort of little angel in the corner. And it's funny because I just took one of these spirit guide tests or whatever, and I'm a manifester, apparently. Manifest, which I'm sure you are as well, because I mean, it's not even a question that you're a manifestor, but anyway, because you just like decide to do things and you're like, okay, we're just going to make this happen right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I think you are too, in the same way that like that retreat, because I know like we had the pleasure of talking about it afterwards, that was transformational. And that is probably going to be the highlight of some of those women's year, if not life. You know what I mean? Because you help them see a shift that they probably didn't even know possible. So then what I think is so cool is we talk about business and ROI and this and that, but like the impact that you were having for those people, like I don't want to use the word priceless because it is so cliche and cheesy, but like there is no way that you can put a value amount on that type of offer that you have. It's not an offer. It's a value add to their entire life.
Thank you for saying that. I would just like at some point to have it be revenue positive as opposed to because right now I'm floating this shit and there's only so much my vision, mission, and values.
I think that's a conversation for another day. I would say you probably need to raise your price on it, no? Everyone get in now before Monique raises her prices, no?
Yeah, really. I know. The next one's May 2nd to 4th. And I'm not entertaining the price conversation because I'm like, dudes, I'm freaking losing money on this shit. Like I'm doing it because I'm building something foundational and organically, but let's be serious. There's only so much you can do. But my point to them, back to the reference to manifestation, is that one of the Achilles heels of a manifestor is we don't take the time to celebrate the wins.
That is the most true thing I've ever heard and describes every step of my business I've ever taken. I never take enough time to celebrate my wins, and I bet you don't either. Whenever someone says it though, doesn't it hit you? Because I've had people tell me this when it's like, "Oh, we're trying this. Yeah, I'm not happy with how that turned out, Emily." Like you can always tell when people get that voice, Monique, Emily. Take a minute and you're like, "Oh, okay. Let me take a minute. Wow, I'm so great. I've accomplished so much. Go me." Back to being not enough. Like, you know what I mean?
So true, because 'cause we're always in action. We're like, "Okay, what's the next?" And I will say with age and with pause, I do see the point, and I do see that I just need to build in a little bit of time for the wins and the celebration and the acknowledgement. If you're not gonna celebrate it and be like, "Yo, I'm so great." Okay, but acknowledge that that was a lift that you just did. In a year, you got a big freaking thing lifted off the ground. That's big.
I mean, I would say it's the same work that we help other people do, right? So, like, you probably did this with the women at your retreat. And in the same way that in my club, I am constantly reminding people that if you built a business, you created something where there was nothing before. We all know what goes into that. That's insane. That's insane in terms of logistics. And that's insane in terms of mental load, in terms of constantly being on. Like, I think when you have a business, you're never off. You never take off your business owner hat and are like, oh, it's time to be a nice wife now. Like, that never happens, unfortunately, for my poor husband. So I think I'm constantly encouraging other people to think about this for themselves, and I think you are too, and it is nice every now and then to have that reminder of like, "Oh, like, we honestly need to take our own advice."
Yeah, eat your own dog food, as I like to call it. So what's the best career advice you ever got?
I think there are 2. I can't remember the second one at the moment because I was thinking about this the other day. Number 1, I would say, is launch before you're ready. Launch before you're ready. I remember I mean, it's not mind-blowing advice, but I remember especially when you're first getting started, somebody told me this, and it was just so true because I was so scared to launch my first offer. You know what I mean? Was so scared to put my first thing out in the world. And the first, no, I think it wasn't the first thing I launched. The first thing I launched was like an influencer marketing offer, and that one was actually pretty good, and that one took off. I got so excited to launch this like done for you email copy club. This is like way back in the day before the email club even existed. My email list wasn't very big. It was a higher price point. It was a good offer. My audience was not ready for it and or right for it. It totally flopped. Totally flopped. I had a whole email campaign. I was talking about it on Instagram. It was so cool. Not a single person signed up. I remember in that moment, what ironically, I don't think I felt like a failure. It was just like, okay, well, let's try the next thing. Like, that didn't work. What else can I do? And I remember that like it immediately took the pressure off of like I think if we put all this effort into a perfect launch and then it doesn't go well, it doesn't go to plan, we're devastated. Whereas in reality, it's like running a business is constantly pivoting, it's constantly adapting. So it's like as soon as it's good enough and you know that it will function. And in my case, I really value, and I think it's similar to you, it has to look good, right? It doesn't have to be 1,000% perfect. I don't need the world's best graphic designer to work on it, but it needs to look good and it needs to look high quality. Just launch it, put it out there, see who likes it. You know what I mean? And that I think is some of the best advice I've ever had. And I take that to heart every single time I launch something. It's like, okay, what's the date? That's the date that we're launching it. No matter what, I'm committing it out into the world, putting it in the Trello ticket. This is the day it will happen. If it doesn't take, okay, it doesn't take. If it does take, amazing. How can I build on that? That to me is from day one, the best advice I would give someone else who's starting is like literally don't wait for it to be perfect. Just launch. Just launch. It's not like unconventional, but I think another piece of advice that I really liked that I cling to all the time that I heard is just like a quote from a conference where I think I was. It was like a marketing conference of female founders. And somebody said, competition is not a bad thing. Competition proves that there's a market for what you do. And I remember at that point in time, that was exactly what I needed to hear because I think a lot of times when you're starting a business, it's really easy to compare yourself to everyone else who's doing fancier and cooler things than you are. Especially for me as a copywriter, getting over my own imposter syndrome of like, I have a BFA in musical theater. Like, who's going to hire me to do this? And realizing that my unconventional approach to copy is what made it so good. Like, I didn't care about grammar rules. I don't have a journalistic background. I just really learned how to A/B test and figure out what makes people click, what makes people buy, what makes people comment. And the more that I realize that, okay, yeah, there are a lot of other copywriters out there. The fact that I do what I do so uniquely is why these people will come to me and not every other copywriter. And if I, for instance, have meetings with people who want that very traditional like approach to copywriting, how fabulous is it for me that I can refer them to somebody else and give somebody else business? And I think for the longest time, I just really hoped that, like, oh, I want to do something that nobody else is doing and I want to be so unique. It's like, okay, well, who's going to find you? Who's going to use SEO keywords for something that literally doesn't exist? You know what I mean? Competition proves that there's a market for what you do. And I think I love that piece of advice. And I would tell it to anyone else who just gets worried that, oh, but everyone else is doing this too. Okay, but you do it differently.
So I got 2 quotes for you before I forget them. One is, "What somebody else thinks is none of your business.
Oh, I like that one.
Whatever they think of you is even less of your business." And number 2 is, "85% great is better than 100% late."
Is that your quote?
That's my quote all the time.
I want that on my wall.
It's like the same thing. It's like if you wait for something to be perfect, first of all, it's going to be perfect for 3 minutes because the market's going to shift. And when you fucking launch it, the market's changed. So now you're not perfect anymore. Sorry, I just dropped an F bomb. But like, honestly, don't wait for, if you overthink, it's like mental just craziness. It's just do it. Just do it. And the other thing I would say is don't wait to hire somebody to help you. That you have to do before you're ready. So I literally Kendra, who you know, I was not ready to hire Kendra. I was like,
Really?
no, I was not ready. Not in the way that I did it with. I didn't think I was ready to hire Kendra.
Kendra is an angel.
She's an awesome person. And so I love her to pieces on so many levels, like literally. So, but the point is, in the moment when we were talking about it, I liked her from when I knew her, she was running a fitness facility. And I'm like, this girl's smart. She's a hard worker. Like you, I literally pulled a Romano with her. And I was like, yeah. And I said, okay, so you're going to help me with this project. It was a social media project. And it was like something I didn't have time to do it. So start on a project basis. And then all of a sudden, like we looked at each other and I said, you know what? You're adding value. I don't know how we're going to do it, but you're going to be full time here. And I just made it happen. Like I just made it happen. I don't know. And it's been like 7 or 8 years now.
I think, okay, that's fair. I would say that's probably piece of advice number 3. That's probably the best business advice I've gotten, because that's also true. I forgot about that one. I've had so many people say, hire before you're ready, hire before you're ready, hire before you're ready. And I did that, I will say, I think last year, in a very similar situation to you. I, like with the email club, I was kind of reaching my max capacity and I was thinking, okay, let me just open up this lower tier and then just kind of cap the membership. That's cool. It creates exclusivity. That's fine. And then one of my favorite editors I've ever worked with left the company where we were working together. They were one of my clients at the time. And I was like, where is she going? She's brilliant. She's one of the most incredible people I've ever worked with. And I was like, Jessica, can we have a coffee chat? And so I just set up a coffee chat with her. And I remember I said, what are you doing in the next couple months? She was like, I don't know. I'm thinking of maybe going back to freelancing. And I was like, are you looking for clients? And immediately I said, do you want to join the 10K email club? You are it. You are the key. You are the way that I could have more members. And at that point in time, I didn't have members for her, but I was like, I will find them. I think probably similar for you and Kendra, where it's like, okay, you are such an incredible person. I want you to be part of my ecosystem. I want you to be contributing to what I am offering the world. We will make it work. And then you do, because you're a business owner and you make everything else work. But that, I think, is so key. And also, I think we don't do it a lot of times because it's scary. It's paying somebody money where you're like, you don't know where it's coming from.
That's right. That's right. But again, it goes back to if you're willing. So you have to have, first of all, my husband said to me, he said to me yesterday, I wrote an email to said lovely client. He's going, you got a set of balls on you. I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm okay with that. You don't like it. I'm sorry for you, but that's not my problem. I'm okay with not being for everybody. And you need to get that you are not for everybody and everybody is not for you. There is no person in the world that is going to be liked by everyone. And if they are liked by everyone, they stand for nothing. And they're probably an obsequious little shit who like doesn't do anything. So everyone's like, oh, he's so sweet. Okay. When he comes out of the garbage can in the alleyway, then, but seriously, like,
Monique, you should do motivational speeches like that. That was great. You're a little shit in the garbage can.
Like whatever. But the point is like, if you stand for something and you have a point of view and you have a talent, you got to bet on yourself. You got to bet on yourself. And if you bet on yourself, somebody's not going to be happy about it. Like in my keynote tomorrow, I'm going to talk about people's opinions of you, if you don't own your own narrative, somebody will make it up about you. Now you choose to accept it or you don't. Why do they have a narrative about you? I've been told I am a bitch. I've been told I'm emotional. I've been told I am, whatever. The lens by which you are seen is the person's psyche. Why am I a bitch? Because I told you no? Why am I emotional? Because I'm a passionate leader and you can't handle it because you're a male, pale, and stale and you can't handle a woman? Are you like,
Male, pale, and stale. I've never heard that one.
I learned that from Jamie Lee. Thank you, Jamie Lee. So, yeah, pale with male, pale, and stale. So the thing is that we have to get as business owners, we need to be clear about what we are offering and for whom we are and who for whom we are not.
And to this point, I knew that I wanted to write for progressive female founders, right? Like I knew that's what I wanted to do. My portfolio didn't 100% support that. I didn't care. My website said I was the copywriter for female founders. You know what I mean? It's almost like willing into existence the thing that you want to happen. Like talk about manifesting. You know what I mean? I just made it known. I mean, look at my website. Look at like what I'm wearing. Everything is like pink and feminine. And I was like, I am the copywriter for women. I am the copywriter for women. I am the copywriter for women. In the beginning, I would write it for anyone who came to me, right? But I knew that my North Star was right for women, right for women, right for women. And I will always be grateful that like I was so intentional about that. And I was very intentional about the way that I was writing and the companies that I was applying for. That my second client wound up being Clue, which is one of the biggest period tracking brands like in the world. And I got to do the exact kind of work that I wanted to do because I had been so intentional about, okay, there were 5,000 copywriting jobs on LinkedIn. I applied for the ones that were women-led companies, right? Because I knew that that would eventually contribute to what I wanted to do. So here I think it's kind of like, this is, I think also one of the mind fucks of having a business is you say you offer this thing and you do this cool thing, but what do you have to support that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. As long as you know you can deliver and you can execute, you say that you do it.
That's right. I just think you need to be very clear. So when I started the business almost 27, it would be 27 years ago, I thought I could do marketing for everyone because I was an agnostic marketer. I was a publisher of a marketing magazine. I dealt with all sorts of brands. I dealt with all sorts of categories. I dealt with all sorts of industries. So I was like, marketing is marketing. Other than toothpaste and lipsticks and CPG, I thought I could do it all. No, that's not true. So the quicker you have your swim lanes, the quicker you're clear about who you are for. And the fact that you have articulated. So the biggest question I get from startups and also female entrepreneurs is, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable with. I said, listen, here's how we're going to play this. If you're not comfortable picking a swim lane, I'm not your consultant because I'm going to tell you right up front, if you don't pick a swim lane, you're going to fail. You will fail because you're trying to be for everyone and that is not a thing. Nobody, if you stand for everyone, you stand for no one. So if you don't make a statement, because then they don't see themselves in you. They don't see the value proposition. They're like, oh, she's like, what does she do? I'm a little confused.
It's the exact same from a messaging perspective, like from a copywriting perspective. Like what I love about exactly what you just said is why I got so excited to work with you specifically when you mentioned the mafia, because it's not for everyone. It's for people who want to be in this like crew of badass women being led by a woman like you who is not afraid to be authentic and loud and inspiring and energetic. You know what I mean? It's not if you like just from and I see this all the time, especially I think the same with you with female founders who are starting a business. They're writing their emails and it's like, well, any client is a good client. Honestly, no, they're not. And we're going to make sure that your messaging is very specific so that you're attracting the type of business that is going to lead you to have this empire that you're building instead of just being mush.
And here's another thing. How good does it feel when you know that the people around you align with you? Let's just talk about that. Let's just talk about the fact that, like, how much energy and grace and just positivity and energy and just feeling joy do you get out of helping people that want to be helped who are on your wavelength? I mean, if I can't be around negative Nelly, I can't be around like Debbie Downer. And if Debbie Downer doesn't turn her frown upside down, I know she's not coachable. So I'm not going to waste my energy on her. I'm sorry. Like, why bother? So I can't get enough of you, but I mean, like, Debbie Downer can go stay in like Dallas. Debbie does Dallas or whatever the fuck.
Debbie does Dallas. I think this podcast just took a turn.
I know. Anyway, so we're going to wrap up here. So if you were going to speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Oh Lord, Monique, what would I tell 20-year-old me? First of all, 20-year-old me,
Or 25? Pick a name, pick a number, but
I would take 20-year-old me because 20-year-old me was still performing. 20-year-old me was working 3 different jobs, going to auditions every day. I think I had probably just come back from oh no, I was still in college at 20, right? Yeah, I was still in college. Was living in New York, working at a restaurant, going to school, dreaming of Broadway, seeing as many musicals as I could. And I think like I would just tell 20-year-old me that she has no idea what's coming, to not overthink anything because I think I just overthought so many things, especially when I was thinking about like massively transforming my life and becoming like a copywriter. And I think I made a lot of decisions that, like, for instance, especially people in my family were like, wow, that's interesting. I never would have made that between going to Vietnam. I loved seeing the world. I knew travel was really important to me. Moving to Portugal. Emily, like, I remember my one sister asked me in the most kind way, what are you going to do there? And I remember I was like, genuinely, I don't know, but I will figure it out because I'm a person who needs to be busy and I'm a person who needs to do things. So I'm going to figure it out. And I think if I could maybe talk to 20-year-old me, it's just kind of like, just really have confidence in the fact that you are a person who will figure it out and you will figure it out. You will figure it out in a way that you never saw coming. 20-year-old me would never in a million years think I would have a business right now and be sitting here literally talking to you about email marketing. 20-year-old me didn't even know what email marketing was. You know what I mean? That like, I would just say, just don't overthink it.
love it. Thank you, Emily Hughes. That was really, really, really great. Do you wanna leave the audience with any parting words? 'Cause this has been a master class in possibilities, really.
I mean, I would thank you for creating the space. I mean, I think you are just as passionate as I am about making sure that like women see that we all have so much incredible potential. And I was actually thinking about this before we hopped on here and sorry, and then we will like actually wrap up is I think you and I are the type of people who weren't afraid to make risky decisions. Which I think other people have pointed out to me before. In the moment, they never really felt risky to me. They just felt like I'm going to find a way to make this work and I'm driven and I'm determined. And I really started, and not to, I don't want to open up this whole can of worms, but the thing that really bothers me is this whole saying that boys will be boys, right? And I feel like there is this natural inclination that men are allowed to make riskier decisions. And I think this prevents a lot of women from starting businesses because we are not the risky ones. We are the practical ones. We are the calculated ones. And I think this is why a lot of women don't start businesses. And I think I would just tell any woman who is not yet in your mafia, who is not yet in your circle, who is not yet following, for instance, like me or the 10K email club or whatever, find these people and latch onto them, whoever it is that will encourage you to make those risky decisions. Because when you make those risky decisions, your life turns out 10 times better than you ever could have imagined. You know what I mean? But I think society is never going to encourage us to make these risky decisions. Like nobody is ever going to encourage women to start more businesses. I just think it's not true, right? And I'm sick of waiting on the world to encourage women to build empires, meanwhile telling boys that they can be boys. So I don't know. I just think I would leave with like, it is never going to be the conventional decision to start a business. It is never going to be the popular idea to go start a product-based business, especially, right? Or open up a consultancy. Like no one's ever going to encourage you to do those things. So I just tell you to find the people who encourage you to do that above all else. And for me, honestly, Monique, you are one of those people. Like you are the person who will tell everyone to get over their own bullshit and just do it because you know how transformational that can be. And I think what I value so much is, first of all, that we know each other. And I look up to you in so many ways. I can't even tell you with the business that you've built. And I think it's because you're not afraid to do what other people see as very risky. And and it doesn't feel risky. You know what I mean? So I think I would just tell people like, take the risk, do it.
Yeah, I think that's funny because I forgot to ask you that. What do you think holds women back? And I think you just answered the question that I never asked. So thank you. Yeah. So let's wrap up with this. So Emily has encapsulated it pretty well. Whether you want to start your own business or go to a corporation that aligns with your values or your mission or your vision of life or what you're passionate about, you can't be afraid to go for it. And I've said this to my son so many times he probably wants to throw me out of the room. As I say, if you're the smartest guy in the room, get another room. Because you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So, again, back to Debbie Downer versus Positive Patty, who do you wanna hang out with? Who is going to impact your psyche, your your environment better than people who are up to something, as I like to say. So if you surround yourself with women who are up to something, you have no choice but to rise to the occasion. If you sit with people who are sitting there eating bonbons, watching TV 24/7, or the average 40% of Gen Zers in 2022 spent 3+ hours on TikTok. That is a statistic. That is a statistic. If you are hanging around with those 40%, buena suerte. You ain't going nowheres, you know? So so you wanna make sure you're very intentional about who you surround yourself with and what ideas permeate your brain, because if you're betting on yourself, you're gonna get that energy from other people who have decided to do the same, like Emily Claire Hughes. So thank you, Possibility Seekers, for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure and probably one of my longest episodes because I'm having so much fun. I really don't want to say goodbye. Emily's contact information is going to be in the show notes. And do subscribe, do review, and let us know what you think. Thanks, guys. And as I always like to say, make it a great day. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at MoniqueDeMeo.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.